Hey there everyone! Today we're diving into a list of the top 10 NES games with great stories. These aren't just your typical jump and shoot games. These titles delivered memorable narratives that hooked players back in the day, sometimes with cinematic cutscenes, twists, and characters you cared about. They could have occurred in-game or with accompanying material. Before we get started, a quick heads up. We'll be touching on some pretty significant story beats in these games, including spoilers. If you're planning to experience any of these games for the first time, you might want to step away now and come back later once you've played them. For those who want a bit of background or some story insight, stick around. It's going to be a fun journey. As we take our first steps, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that bell so that you can be alerted to more content from That's Entertainment every week. Starting off at number 10, Star Tropics is a quirky, charming action-adventure game that's often overlooked, but definitely worth a look for story fans. You play as Mike Jones, a 15-year-old boy on a mission to save his missing uncle and uncover the mysteries of a strange tropical island. Unlike many NES games, Star Tropics injects humor and personality into its dialogue, giving it a lighthearted yet engaging narrative that unfolds across exotic locations. It had enough detail to give it some heart, including backstory for Mike as an ace pitcher, and his uncle being a talented archaeologist. The game also featured a unique mechanic when it was released. The game was packaged with a physical letter that made things feel more immersive. But even cooler was that you had to dip it in water to reveal a code to progress in the game. While it was certainly different and brought players into the world a bit more, it's likely that it was also a form of early DRM as well. In any case, the game's blend of adventure, puzzles, and storytelling make it a memorable entry on this list. Next up is Astyanax, a fantasy action game that feels almost like a lost anime adaptation on the NES. While my rules for this list was to generally ignore games that first showed up on other platforms, and this game first appeared in arcades, the NES version stands apart with its own unique story and atmosphere. You play as the titular Astyanax, a freshman from Greenview High who has been having strange recurring dreams. One day, the sky seems to change, and Astyanax finds himself in another world, Remlia, brought forth by the fairy, Cutie. She needs Astyanax to save Princess Rosebud from the evil wizard Blackhorn, so she equips him with armor and a legendary axe called Bash, which can be changed into a sword or a spear along the way. After that, she sets Astyanax on his way, checking in from time to time. The story is straightforward but effective. It's a classic good versus evil tale with a heartfelt ending that adds emotional weight to your journey. The game's fairy companion, Cutie, adds charm and personality to the narrative, and we even get to see some of the game from the perspective of the antagonist. All in all, it may be a simple entry from a gameplay perspective, but it feels almost like an isekai come to life. Mother is the first game in the series that would later inspire Earthbound. Set apart from a good number of RPGs at the time, which were by and large fantasy-themed, this one had a modern-day setting, and quirky humor, which sort of poked a bit of fun at Americana. This satirization of the genre and its tropes led it to have a cult status after a meager debut. Mother introduces players to Ninten, a young boy who discovers he has psychic powers, and sets out to save the world from alien invaders. The story combines whimsy with surprisingly deep emotional moments, and tackles themes that were unusual for NES games, such as family, friendship, and destiny. It knows and appreciates that its main character is a child, and it explores his imagination in beautiful ways. The distinct tone and narrative style of Mother laid the groundwork for one of the most beloved cult RPG series, making it an important entry on this list. We didn't get Mother in the US until, well, technically not ever. But for the 20th anniversary of Earthbound's release, the first game was released on the Wii U Virtual Console as Earthbound Beginnings. Vice, Project Doom, offers one of the most cinematic experiences on the NES. This action game by ICOM, the same developer who brought us Astyanax, is one of the more impressive games in its presentation, and it blends different genres, making it feel like pulp 80s action films and detective noir in the same game. It follows Detective Quinn Hart as he investigates a sinister conspiracy that becomes increasingly unbelievable as the story progresses. At first, presenting as just an action game that could take place in any big city in the US, it quickly grows to involve alien bioweapons and corrupt corporations. The game is packed with cutscenes that drive a complex noirish storyline, making it feel like an interactive detective thriller. The plot twists and varied gameplay, including side-scrolling combat, driving sequences, and even some shooter levels, keep players engaged while delivering a story that's surprisingly mature and intricate for the time. In a lot of ways, it can feel derivative of some of the other games that came out at the time, but it uses its story to weave them all together very well. If you appreciate storytelling that feels like a movie, Vice Project Doom deserves your attention. Further up the list, we have Crystalis, an action RPG set in a post-apocalyptic world where you play as a hero awakened from cryogenic sleep to defeat an evil empire. In a way, that makes the anonymous protagonist a little like Steve Rogers, or Link in Breath of the Wild. The story mixes fantasy and sci-fi elements, with a memorable narrative about restoring balance and hope to a devastated land. What sets Crystalis apart is its atmospheric world and detailed dialogue that reveal a layered story, with themes of sacrifice and redemption woven throughout. It's also got some vibes that make it feel like it bridges the gap between some of the Final Fantasy games and The Legend of Zelda. 4 is a magic number in Final Fantasy, like with 4 heroes and their 4 fiends, and Crystalis has a quartet of their own recurring villains. And 4 are also the swords which the characters intend to unite into the legendary Crystalis. The gameplay complements the narrative perfectly, offering real-time combat and exploration that lets the story unfold organically as you progress. It's a true hidden gem in the NES library. Speaking of classic RPGs, at the halfway mark, Final Fantasy stands as a landmark title that launched one of the most enduring RPG franchises. Though the story may feel simple by today's standards, 4 heroes of light on a quest to save the world from darkness, it was ambitious for its time, and there are some twists and turns that you might not be aware of, even all these years later. The history of the world in Final Fantasy is that elemental forces are governed by the state of magic crystals. These crystals have played a big part in many of the games in the series, so it's great to see that they were there when it all started. The game's narrative unfolds as you explore dungeons, meet NPCs, and gather powerful crystals. The story seems at first blush to be classic fantasy fare, but it set the stage for deeper storytelling in RPGs to come. For NES players, it was a chance to dive into a sprawling epic that combined exploration, combat, and narrative in a way few games had done before. And more importantly, it has one of the coolest twists ever in games, having to do with timey-wimey goodness that brings you all the way back to the start of the game in some respects. A haunted house game on the NES? Absolutely. Sweet Home is a survival RPG that is a direct ancestor to the Resident Evil series. Seriously, it's often considered a spiritual predecessor to the original game in that series, and Resident Evil was almost set to be a remake of this game. The director of Sweet Home also produced Resident Evil. Developed alongside a movie of the same name, Sweet Home's story centers on a group of 5 documentary filmmakers who are trapped in a haunted mansion, each with their own backstory and secrets. And while the characters get a chance to shine, the house and the ghosts that remain behind are just as interesting. What makes Sweet Home remarkable is how it weaves these personal stories into the gameplay, with multiple endings possible based on how well you play. This was pretty rare for the time, certainly. The narrative's dark tone, atmospheric tension, and mature themes were groundbreaking for an NES title. While it never officially released outside Japan, its influence on storytelling in games is huge, and it's well worth exploring for story enthusiasts. Taking the third spot, Metroid revolutionized storytelling by using the game environment itself to tell its tale. The planet Zeebs is an awesome atmospheric place to discover, and though the game is a product of its time and players can end up feeling lost rather easily, finding your way to secrets is incredibly rewarding because of it. You play as Samus Aran, a bounty hunter exploring the alien planet to stop a vicious crew of space pirates from replicating Metroids, incredibly dangerous creatures that can latch onto living organisms and drain their life force. The game's narrative is subtle, conveyed through exploration, atmosphere, and quiet, eerie ambience. This non-verbal storytelling created a deep sense of immersion and mystery that captivated players, making Metroid a milestone in video game narrative design. It's a perfect example of how less can be more when it comes to storytelling. Of course, it's punctuated by awesome battles with series mainstays Kraid and Ridley, and of course, the diabolical Mother Brain. There was also an unforgettable twist revealing Samus Aran's identity, which was huge for its time, and a surprise that has been immortalized in gaming history ever since. The runner-up on our list is Dragon Warrior 3, one of the most beloved classic RPGs on the NES. While the first two Dragon Warrior games were great for their time, they lacked any huge story beats. They still told a competent story, but it took this third game in the series to truly weave everything together into the great enduring story the series has since presented. Dragon Warrior 3's expansive story lets you create a party of heroes who journey to defeat an ancient evil threatening the world. The game is known for its deep character customization and non-linear storytelling, allowing players to explore vast towns, dungeons, and side quests that enrich the main narrative. But what really sets this one aside? Well, there are two big reasons that this game's story soars. The first is that your character is following in your father's footsteps, trying to wipe out evil along the way. It had long before been surmised that your father had passed away, but some surprises along the way have powerful emotional impacts that captivate and immerse you more than the typical NES game could do at the time. The second is that you realize this game is chronologically the first game in the Erdrick trilogy of Dragon Warrior games, meaning that you are the legendary hero that you've been trying to live up to in the other games in the series. Without a doubt, this release is a sprawling epic, filled with memorable moments, intriguing characters, and a satisfying conclusion that cemented its place in RPG history. And finally, at number 1, we have Ninja Gaiden, the king of cinematic storytelling on the NES. Known for its fast-paced action and punishing difficulty, Ninja Gaiden also raised the bar with its use of detailed, anime-style cutscenes that weave a gripping revenge tale. You play as Ryu Hayabusa, a ninja seeking to avenge his father's death and stop a demonic plot threatening the world. That might sound like a paint-by-numbers concept of games on the NES, but what sets Ninja Gaiden aside from others on the system is the way it's presented. The globe-trotting game takes Ryu all over the world to learn more about evil syndicates, and there are plenty of emotionally impactful moments. Honestly, this game would have probably been on my top 10 NES games that could be made into movies list, if it hadn't already been adapted in 1991. There are so many interesting story beats that just stick with you. The story is packed with suspense, drama, and plot twists, all delivered with a flair that was unheard of on the NES. Ninja Gaiden didn't just tell a story, it made players feel it, setting a high standard for narrative and action games. It's the reason that this game sits on top of the list, and why it wears the crown for story-driven games of that era. Thanks for joining me on this journey through some of the best stories the NES had to offer. These games may be over 30 years old, but their narratives still hold up, and continue to inspire game storytelling today. If you're interested in diving deeper into any of these titles, I highly recommend giving them a playthrough, whether for nostalgia or to experience a piece of gaming history. If you enjoyed this trip down memory lane, remember to like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell. We'll be back next week with another top 10 list, but until then, I hope you enjoy whatever stories you find. Check out our review for Arcade Paradise. It's a very fun, retro-heavy game. If you're into D&D, you can also check out our sister channel, Tellist, where we have plenty of maps on display. And we'll also be refreshing this channel with new retro reviews, so keep an eye out.